The bass thumped through my chest like a second heartbeat, rattling the ice in my untouched whiskey. I wasn't here for the chaos of the Electric Pulse, Seattle's loudest queer nightclub, but for the quiet corner booth where I could disappear. Then I shifted in my seat, and a chill hit me. My underwear was gone, and with it, every wall I'd built around my heart. Ezra, 28, non-binary, didn't come to clubs for hookups or heartbreak. I came to the Electric Pulse because it was the only place in the city where I could be invisible yet surrounded, where my leather jacket and sharp jawline didn't demand explanation. Tonight, though, the universe had other plans. I'd slipped into the bathroom earlier, a quick escape from the sensory overload, and somewhere between the sticky tiles and the flickering fluorescent lights, my boxer briefs had vanished. A wardrobe malfunction? A prank? I didn't know, but the draft under my jeans was a loud reminder I was exposed in more ways than one. The club was a kaleidoscope of bodies, sweaty, glittering, unapologetic. Drag queens in towering wigs commanded the stage, their sequins catching the strobe lights like tiny explosions. Couples swayed, strangers flirted, and I sat alone, clutching my drink, trying to ignore the absurdity of my situation. I scanned the room for answers, for a distraction, for anything to anchor me. That's when I saw her. Jamie, 30, trans woman, stood at the bar, her emerald dress hugging her frame like she'd stepped out of a dream. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves, and her eyes, God, those eyes, held a mix of defiance and vulnerability that made my breath catch. She wasn't just beautiful. She was a story I wanted to read. I didn't realize I was staring until she turned, catching my gaze. Her lips curved into a shy smile, and suddenly, the missing underwear didn't matter. Nothing did. I pushed through the crowd, heart pounding louder than the music. "Hi," I said, voice barely audible over the bass. "I'm Ezra." She tilted her head, sizing me up with a playful glint. "Jamie," she replied, her voice warm, like honey over gravel. "You look like you're hiding from something." I laughed, caught off guard. Maybe I am. Or maybe I just lost something. Her eyebrow arched, intrigued, but I didn't elaborate. Not yet. We talked, leaning closer as the noise tried to drown us out. Jamie was a graphic designer, new to Seattle, still finding her footing after leaving a small town that never understood her. "I came here to start over," she said, her fingers tracing the rim of her glass. "To be me without apologizing." I nodded, understanding more than I could say. I'd spent years carving out my own space, rejecting labels that didn't fit, fighting for the right to exist as I was. But tonight I wasn't fighting. I was falling. The conversation flowed like the whiskey I'd forgotten to drink. We laughed about bad dates, shared stories of chosen families, and danced around the heavier stuff. Parents who didn't get it, scars that still ached. Then, mid-sentence, Jamie's eyes widened. "Oh no," she whispered, glancing down. I followed her gaze to her purse, where a small rip had spilled its contents across the bar. Lipstick, keys, a crumpled photo, and a pair of black boxer briefs. My boxer briefs. "Is this yours?" she asked, holding them up, her cheeks flushing. The crowd didn't notice, but to me it was a spotlight. I froze, torn between laughter and mortification. "How did?" I stammered. She bit her lip, trying not to laugh. "I found them in the bathroom. Thought they were well. I didn't know what to think." The absurdity broke us both, and we laughed until tears stung our eyes. It was the kind of moment that could have ended in awkward goodbyes, but instead, it felt like a beginning. We moved to a quieter corner, the boxer briefs tucked into my pocket like a secret we now shared. Jamie's hand brushed mine, and I didn't pull away. "You're not like anyone I've met," she said softly. I wanted to say the same, but my throat tightened. Instead, I squeezed her hand, letting the gesture speak. The club pulsed around us, but in that moment, it was just us, two souls finding each other in the chaos. As the night deepened, Jamie told me about her ex, a controlling guy who'd tried to dim her light. "I left him," she said, her voice steady but laced with pain. "But sometimes, I still hear his voice, telling me I'm not enough." I wanted to erase that doubt, to tell her she was more than enough, but words felt too small. So I listened, letting her spill her fears, her dreams, her truth. And I shared mine, how I'd spent years running from connection, afraid of being seen too closely. By 2 a.m., the club was thinning out, but we didn't notice. We were lost in each other, in the kind of conversation that feels like a lifeline. Then the DJ announced last call and reality crept in. "I don't want this to end," Jamie said, her eyes searching mine. I didn't either, but the weight of the night, my vulnerability, her openness, the ridiculous underwear saga, made me hesitate. Could I let my guard down completely? Could I trust this feeling? I walked her to her car, the Seattle drizzle coating us in a fine mist. "Can I see you again?" I asked, heart in my throat. She smiled, that same shy curve that had undone me hours ago. "Only if you promise not to lose your underwear next time." We laughed, and she leaned in, her lips brushing my cheek. It wasn't a kiss, not yet, but it was a promise. As she drove away, I stood under the streetlight, the city humming around me. My underwear was back in my pocket, but my guard, that was long gone. The next morning, I woke with Jamie's smile burned into my mind, her voice echoing like a song I couldn't shake. Seattle's gray sky pressed against my apartment window, but inside, I felt a warmth I hadn't known in years. I texted her, "Coffee today? I promised to keep my clothes on." Her reply came fast, "Only if it's good coffee. Meet me at the Bean Haven 1 p.m. My heart did a flip, and I spent the next hour overthinking my outfit, settling on a flannel shirt and jeans. Safe, but me. The Bean Haven was a cozy spot in Capitol Hill, all exposed brick and mismatched chairs. Jamie was already there, her auburn hair catching the light as she sketched in a notebook. She looked up, and her smile hit me like sunlight. "You made it," she said, closing her sketchbook. "I was worried you'd get lost in another bathroom." I grinned, sliding into the seat across from her. "Not today. I'm keeping my pockets on lockdown." We ordered lattes and fell into easy conversation, picking up where the club left off. She showed me her sketches, bold, colorful designs that felt like her, vibrant, unapologetic, a little raw. I told her about my job as a freelance photographer, capturing moments for others while hiding my own. "You're good at seeing people," she said, her eyes locking on mine. "But do you let anyone see you?" The question stung, but her tone was gentle, not accusing. I shrugged, deflecting. "I'm working on it." The coffee date stretched into a walk through California Anderson Park, where autumn leaves crunched under our feet. Jamie's laughter was infectious, her stories animated, tales of her childhood in rural Idaho, where she dreamed of a bigger world. I shared snippets of my own past. Growing up in Portland, navigating a family that loved me but didn't always understand. "They still call me by my old name sometimes," I admitted. Jamie nodded, her hand grazing mine. "Mine too. It's like they're holding on to someone who never really existed." We stopped by a fountain, the water catching the fading light. Jamie's fingers intertwined with mine, and I didn't pull away. "I'm scared," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the water's rush. It feels too good, like it could hurt." I swallowed hard, feeling the same fear. "I know, but maybe it's worth the risk." She looked at me, her eyes searching, and for the first time I didn't look away. That night we ended up at my apartment, a small loft with too many plants and not enough furniture. Jamie laughed at my chaotic bookshelves, pulling out a worn copy of Giovanni's Room. "You're a romantic," she teased. I blushed, caught. We sat on the couch, sharing takeout and stories, the city's hum a soft backdrop. When she leaned in to kiss me, it was soft, tentative, like she was asking permission. I answered by kissing her back, my hands finding her waist, her breath warm against my lips. It was the kind of kiss that rearranged the world, that made me believe in something bigger than myself. But the next day, doubt crept in. Jamie texted me about a gallery opening she wanted to attend together, but my mind spiraled. What if this was too fast? What if I wasn't ready to be this open, this vulnerable? I'd spent years guarding myself, keeping relationships at arm's length. Jamie was different. She saw me, really saw me, and that terrified me as much as it thrilled me. I met her at the gallery, a sleek space in Pioneer Square filled with abstract art and pretentious wine. Jamie looked stunning in a black jumpsuit, her confidence drawing eyes. But I noticed her fidgeting, her smile faltering when a stranger misgendered her at the bar. "It's fine," she said when I asked if she was okay. But her voice was tight. I wanted to fix it, to shield her, but I didn't know how. Instead, I took her hand, grounding us both. The night took a turn when Jamie's phone buzzed repeatedly. She glanced at it, her face paling. "It's my ex," she said, her voice low. "He's been texting me. He knows I'm in Seattle." My stomach twisted. "What does he want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head. "I don't know. I blocked him months ago, but he keeps finding ways to reach me." The fear in her eyes mirrored my own, but for different reasons. I was scared of losing her, of this fragile thing we were building. But I was also angry. Angry that someone had hurt her, was still hurting her. We left the gallery early, walking through the rain-soaked streets. "I won't let him ruin this," Jamie said, her voice fierce. "I've fought too hard to be here, to be me." I pulled her close, the rain blurring the world around us. "You're not alone," I said, meaning it. But as we stood there, her head against my chest, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. Something that would test us both. The next week was a blur of stolen moments. Breakfasts at hole-in-the-wall diners, late-night talks on my balcony, Jamie's laughter filling the spaces I'd kept empty for so long. But her ex's texts cast a shadow. They came sporadically, cryptic and unsettling. "I know where you are. You can't run forever." Jamie tried to brush them off, but I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way her smile dimmed when her phone lit up. I wanted to protect her, but I was grappling with my own ghosts. My last relationship had ended in flames. A partner who couldn't handle my non-binary identity, who wanted me to pick a side. I'd sworn off love after that, convinced it was safer to stay guarded. Jamie was unraveling that conviction, but trust didn't come easy. Every time I felt myself falling deeper, a voice whispered, "What if you're not enough?" One evening, we went to a drag show at the Electric Pulse, the same club where we'd met. The energy was electric, the crowd roaring as a queen named Sapphire strutted in a glittering gown. Jamie was radiant, her emerald dress catching the lights, but her eyes kept darting to her phone. "He's here," she whispered suddenly, gripping my arm. "In Seattle. He just texted me a picture of the Space Needle." My heart sank. "What does he want?" I asked, already knowing the answer was trouble. We slipped out the back, the cool night air a shock after the club's heat. Jamie's hands shook as she showed me the texts. Taunting, possessive, laced with a cruelty that made my blood boil. "His name's Derek," she said, her voice small. "He was controlling, manipulative. I thought I'd escaped him." I pulled her into a hug, my own fear swallowed by the need to be strong for her. "He can't touch you," I said. "Not while I'm here." But Derek was closer than we thought. The next day, Jamie got a call from her landlord. Someone had been asking about her, describing her perfectly, claiming to be family. Panic set in. We decided she'd stay at my place until we figured out what to do. My loft, once a fortress of solitude, became our sanctuary. We cooked dinner together, her laughter easing the tension, but the weight of Derek's presence lingered. That night, as we lay in bed, Jamie traced circles on my chest. "I'm scared, Ezra," she admitted. "Not just of him, but of how much I feel for you. It's like I'm finally free, but I'm terrified of losing it." I kissed her forehead, my heart aching. "You won't lose me," I promised, but the words felt fragile against the storm brewing outside. The next morning, I woke to find Jamie gone. A note on the counter read, "Went to get coffee. Back soon." My stomach churned. I texted her, no reply, called straight to voicemail. By noon, I was pacing, dread clawing at me. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It was a photo of Jamie, sitting in a cafe, unaware of the camera. The caption, "She's mine." I grabbed my keys, heart pounding. I didn't know where she was, but I knew the Bean Haven was her favorite spot. I ran through the rain, the city a blur, praying I wasn't too late. When I burst into the cafe, Jamie was there, alone, sketching. Relief flooded me, but it was short-lived. A man sat in the corner, watching her, tall, broad-shouldered, his eyes cold. Derek. I slid into the booth next to Jamie, my voice low. "He's here." Her face paled, but she nodded, gripping my hand. "I saw him outside earlier." I didn't know what to do. We paid the bill quickly, slipping out the back door, but Derek followed, his footsteps heavy behind us. The rain was relentless, soaking us as we ducked into an alley. "Jamie!" he shouted, his voice cutting through the storm. "You can't hide from me." We ran, hearts racing, until we reached a crowded street. Safety in numbers, I thought, but Derek was relentless, closing the gap. Jamie's hand trembled in mine, but her eyes burned with defiance. "I'm done running," she said, stopping abruptly. She turned to face him, and I stood beside her, ready for whatever came next. Rain plastered Jamie's hair to her face, but her stance was unyielding as Derek loomed closer. He was bigger than I'd imagined, his presence menacing, but Jamie didn't flinch. "You don't own me, Derek," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You never did." His laugh was cold, cutting through the Seattle drizzle. "You think you can just walk away? Start over with this?" He gestured at me, his sneer dripping with disdain. I stepped forward, anger flaring, but Jamie squeezed my hand, grounding me. "This is Ezra," she said, her voice rising, "and they're more real than you'll ever be." The street was alive with pedestrians, their umbrellas bobbing like shields, but to me, it was just the three of us. Derek took a step closer, his eyes locked on Jamie. "You're making a mistake," he said, his tone low, threatening. My heart pounded, but Jamie stood taller. "The only mistake was staying with you," she shot back. "I'm done being your shadow." For a moment, I thought he'd lunge, but a group of passers-by slowed, their curious glances making him hesitate. "This isn't over," he spat, then turned and disappeared into the crowd. Jamie exhaled, her shoulders sagging, and I pulled her into my arms. "You were incredible," I whispered. She buried her face in my chest, her breath shaky. "I was terrified," she admitted, "but I had to do it. For me." We went back to my loft, soaked and shaken but alive with a new kind of strength. Jamie called the police, filing a report about Derek's harassment. The officer was kind but realistic, without concrete evidence. There wasn't much they could do yet. Still, Jamie felt lighter, like she'd reclaimed a piece of herself. We spent the night wrapped in blankets, talking about everything and nothing, the fear fading with every shared laugh. The next day, we decided to take back our space. We went to the Electric Pulse not to hide but to celebrate. The club was packed, the energy infectious, and Jamie glowed as we danced. Her hands on my hips, my lips brushing her ear. "I'm falling for you," I whispered, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Her eyes softened, and she kissed me, deep and sure, the crowd fading away. But the shadow of Derek lingered. Over the next few days, Jamie noticed small things. A car parked too long outside her studio. A missed call from an unknown number. She tried to stay strong, but I saw the worry creeping back. I suggested we talk to a lawyer about a restraining order, and she agreed, but the process was slow, bureaucratic. In the meantime, we leaned on our community. Friends from the club, my neighbor Rosa, who'd seen her share of battles and offered to keep an eye out. One night, as we walked home from a movie, Jamie stopped suddenly. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice heavy. "Derek, he wasn't just controlling. He hurt me, physically." The confession hit like a punch. I wanted to rage, to find him, to make him pay, but Jamie needed me present, not vengeful. "I'm so sorry," I said, pulling her close. "You didn't deserve that. You deserve everything good." She nodded, tears falling, and I held her until the streetlights blurred. The next morning, we woke to a brick through my window. Glass littered the floor, and a note was tied to the brick. "You can't have her." My blood ran cold. Jamie's face was pale, but her jaw was set. "He's not going to win," she said. We called the police again, and this time they took it seriously, promising to track Derek down. But the fear was real now, a constant weight. I installed a security camera, and Jamie moved in permanently, her sketches and clothes blending with mine, our lives intertwining even as danger loomed. We tried to hold on to normalcy, cooking together, binge-watching queer rom-coms, stealing kisses in the kitchen. But every creak of the floorboards, every strange noise, made us jump. I hated how Derek's shadow tainted our joy, but I also saw Jamie's resilience, her refusal to break. She was fighting for herself, for us, and I'd never been prouder to stand beside someone. The police found Derek 2 days later, holed up in a motel on the edge of Seattle. He'd violated a temporary restraining order, and the brick incident gave them enough to arrest him. Jamie and I sat in the precinct, her hand in mine, as the officer explained the charges. It wasn't over. There'd be a hearing, legal battles, but for the first time, Jamie felt like she could breathe. "I'm free," she whispered as we left, her voice trembling with relief. Back at the loft, we cleaned up the glass, patching the window with cardboard until it could be fixed. The act felt symbolic, like we were piecing ourselves back together. Jamie's sketches covered the walls now, bursts of color that made the space ours. We cooked dinner, spaghetti with too much garlic, and laughed about the night we met, the underwear saga now a cherished joke. "You know," she said, twirling pasta, "I think I fell for you when you didn't run screaming from that bar." I grinned, my heart full. "I fell for you when you held up my boxers like a trophy." We kissed across the table, the kind of kiss that promised forever, even if forever scared me. I'd spent so long guarding my heart, but with Jamie, I didn't need walls. She was my home. The hearing came a month later. Derek pleaded guilty to harassment and vandalism, avoiding a trial. Jamie stood tall in the courtroom, her statement unwavering. "I'm not your property. I'm my own person, and I'm building a life you can't touch." I squeezed her hand, pride swelling in my chest. The judge sentenced Derek to probation and a permanent restraining order. And as we walked out, the Seattle sun broke through the clouds, a rare gift. We celebrated at the Electric Pulse, surrounded by friends who'd become family, Sapphire, who toasted us with champagne, Rosa, who'd brought her famous empanadas, and a dozen others who cheered us on. Jamie and I danced until dawn, her body pressed against mine, our laughter louder than the music. The club, once a place I'd gone to hide, was now where I'd found everything. Months later, we moved into a new apartment, a bright space with a view of the Puget Sound. Jamie's art hung everywhere, and my photos, candid shots of her, of us, filled the gaps. We weren't perfect. We argued about dishes, got annoyed when I left my camera gear everywhere, but we always came back to each other. Love wasn't a cure for everything, but it was a choice we made every day. One evening, as we watched the sunset from our balcony, Jamie turned to me, her eyes soft. "Thank you for seeing me," she said. I kissed her, slow and deep, the city sparkling below. "Thank you for seeing me," I replied. We'd both been running from pain, from fear, from ourselves, but we'd stopped long enough to find each other. The underwear incident, it became our origin story, a reminder that sometimes the most absurd moments lead to the most beautiful ones. We'd lost our guards, our fears, and found something worth fighting for. Each other, our truth, our place in the world. And as the stars blinked on, I knew we'd keep fighting, together, for as long as we had.